The world yearned for harmony after the end of World War I. That war, optimistically called the War to End All Wars, had inflicted over 37 million casualties and more than 8.5 million deaths between 1914 and 1918. Yet in spite of the international hunger for peace, ominous signs of renewed world conflict began to appear within the next 15 years. And a major center of this gathering storm was Imperial Japan. A proud island nation, Japan was highly industrialized, but lacked natural resources. It was also feeling the effects of the Great Depression that hit the United States beginning in 1929, and was having difficulty maintaining its recently achieved world power status. By the 1930s, Japan felt compelled to use its military might to expand into surrounding territories. Such expansion would allow it to acquire raw materials and new markets, and to establish itself as the dominant power in Asia. In September 1931, Japan invaded and conquered Manchuria. Encouraged by this easy victory, the Japanese continued their Asian expansion plan by conducting a brutal invasion of China in July 1937, driving the Chinese government away from the coast and into the mountains. As a result, the U.S. was determined to take a stronger approach to matters of foreign policy regarding Japan. Storm clouds were forming in Europe, too. In the 1930s, two European dictators were making their own plans for world domination. In Italy, Benito Mussolini and his fascist party were vowing to regain the worldwide prestige and power Italy had once enjoyed during the days of the Roman Empire. In Germany, Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party were beginning to rule their nation with an iron fist. By 1936, Hitler and Mussolini had signed an alliance, the Rome-Berlin Axis. The European storm gathered strength when Mussolini conquered a defenseless Ethiopia in 1938 as the first step of his intention to extend Italy's control into African territories. In the same year, Nazi Germany's occupation of Austria and parts of Czechoslovakia intensified the buildup of the storm. In September 1939, Hitler's armies stepped up their European aggression by invading Poland. In response, Britain and France declared war on Germany. World War II had begun. Germany steamrolled through Poland, the Scandinavian countries, Belgium, and France. In less than a year, Germany had conquered most of Europe, and Britain was under siege. The United States still officially maintained its neutrality.
This nation will remain a neutral nation, but I cannot ask that every American remain neutral in thought as well.
But it also carefully monitored these global hostilities. While staying out of these conflicts, America did begin supplying materials and moral support to surviving allies, Britain and Russia. And in May 1940, as a warning to Japan against additional Asian aggression, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt ordered the U.S. Navy's Pacific Fleet repositioned from California to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. At the time of this relocation of its Pacific Fleet, the U.S. Navy as a whole was slightly larger than that of Japan's, but because of the growing war in Europe, the American Navy was divided between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. By the spring of 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy was more than twice the size of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. It possessed 10 aircraft carriers to the U.S.'s 3, and a total fleet size of 232 ships compared to the Pacific Fleet's 109. Japan further escalated world tensions in September 1940 by signing the Tripartite Pact with Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy. The Rome-Berlin Axis was now the Rome-Berlin-Tokyo Axis. Hitler was excited about the alliance with Japan and promised to support the Japanese in the event of a war with the United States. By this time, Imperial Japan controlled Manchuria, large portions of China, Korea, Taiwan, then Formosa, Hunan, and the Marshall, Caroline, and Mariana Islands. Its expansion plan now focused on a southern resource area consisting of Southeast Asia and the South Pacific, whose natural resources were critical to Japan's vital industries and its war machine. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the commander of Japan's combined fleet, believed the first step in this southern expansion was to attack the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. With this fleet disabled, Japan could then conduct its southern operations without opposition. By the time the Pacific Fleet could be repaired, Japan would have met its objectives and would have had time to develop a protectorate or defense shield around these new territories.